Welcome to Elselah Books Podcast. Today, we're diving into the story of one of the most fascinating and honestly complicated women in ancient scripture, Rebekah. Her life is just this incredible study in contradiction. So, let's get right into it. On the one hand, you have Rebekah, this amazingly hardworking and generous person, a woman of real faith. But then, on the other hand, you have a mother who played favorites and used some serious deception to get her way. So how can one person be both of those things? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. All right, so our story kicks off like so many do at a well. We're just outside the town of Nahor. Picture a young Rebekah just doing her evening chore of fetching water. It's a simple, everyday task, right? But it's about to change literally everything, all because of one single generous choice. So as she's there, a traveler comes up to her. Now, this isn't just any traveler. He's Abraham's most trusted servant, and he's on a mission from God, really, to find a wife for his master's son, Isaac. He makes a simple request. Can I have a little water from your jug? A tiny ask. But Rebekah's response? It's anything but tiny. And this is where we see just how incredible her offer was. She doesn't just give the man a drink. Oh no. She then volunteers to draw water for all 10 of his camels. Now, to put that into perspective for you, a single thirsty camel can drink over 30 gallons of water. This wasn't just a small favor. It was a huge, physically demanding job, and it tells you everything you need to know about her spirit. And here's where the story gets really amazing. This wasn't just some random act of kindness. See, the servant had just finished praying for a very specific sign. He prayed that the right woman for Isaac wouldn't just give him a drink, but would also offer to water all of his camels. Rebekah's generosity was a direct answer to that prayer, and just like that, her whole future was set into motion. So, Rebekah leaves everything she knows, travels a long way, and marries Isaac. Her new life begins. But it pretty quickly runs into a huge challenge, one that's going to test her patience and her faith for 2 very long decades. For the first 20 years of their marriage, Rebekah couldn't have children. Now, in that culture, this was a source of deep, deep sorrow. You can only imagine how hard that must have been, having left her whole world behind. But Isaac prayed for her, and eventually that long season of waiting came to an end. And when she did finally become pregnant, it was not a smooth ride. The babies were literally struggling inside of her. And in her distress, she turns to God and gets this incredible prophecy directly from him. This promise would shape the rest of her life. 2 nations were in her womb. And get this, completely breaking with all tradition, the older son would one day serve the younger. And this is where Rebekah's story takes that sharp, complicated turn. You'd think, armed with the direct promise from God, she could just sit back and trust that it would all work out. But as the years went by, it seems her faith started to mix with fear and a whole lot of favoritism. It's really sad, actually. The family became completely divided, with the parents choosing sides. Her husband, Isaac, he favored the firstborn, Esau, the rugged outdoorsman. But Rebekah? Her heart belonged to the younger son, Jacob. And this favoritism, it just set the stage for a rivalry that would end up tearing their family apart. So when an old blind Isaac decides it's time to give his final, most powerful blessing to his favorite son, Esau, Rebekah decides she can't leave it to chance. She overhears the plan, and instead of trusting God's prophecy, she cooks up this whole elaborate scheme. She orchestrates a disguise for Jacob, tells him exactly what to say, and pushes him to lie to his own father to steal the blessing that was meant for his brother. And you know what? The plan works. Jacob gets the blessing, but it's a hollow victory because the price of her deception is immediate. And it is absolutely devastating for everyone. I mean, the fallout is instantaneous. Esau is filled with a murderous rage. Jacob has to literally flee for his life, becoming an exile from his own home. These 2 brothers are torn apart, and this family feud doesn't just stop with them. It echoes for generations, creating this legacy of conflict. And here is the most tragic irony in this whole story. In her desperate, fearful attempt to secure a great future for the son she loved so much, Rebekah ended up losing him completely. Jacob was gone for over 20 years, and she died before he ever made it back home. The son she cheated for was the son she never saw again. So, what do we do with this? How do we make sense of the generous young woman at the well and the manipulative mother who broke her family? Let's try to put the pieces together. When you get right down to it, Rebekah's heart was totally divided. She had faith, for sure. She believed God's promise about her sons. But she was also riddled with doubt. She just couldn't bring herself to trust that God could pull it off without her help. Her fear convinced her that this divine promise needed her very human, very deceptive intervention. And yet, this might be the most powerful part of her story. Despite her huge flaws, despite all the pain she caused, her life shows us that God's plans are not stopped by our imperfections. He was still at work, graciously using this flawed, complicated woman to move his grand story right along. Which really leaves us with a challenging question, doesn't it? When you look at her story, that generosity and faith at war with her fear and her need for control, where do you see yourself in that? It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest battles we fight aren't out in the world, but right inside our own hearts. Thank you for listening, and do subscribe to our channel for more.